Hi, I'm Gill Walton. I'm a painter, fine art painter. This workshop that I'm going to be doing today is about golden proportions and composition, and hopefully by the end of this you'll have more of an idea about how to put together a really well composed painting of your own. So ideas about composition started with the ancient Greeks, where theories about art and mathematics were interchangeable. They didn't separate out the two lots of ideas, and they tried to use mathematical formula to find perfect and pure beauty. So then we move on to the 12th century, and the mathematician Fibonacci came up with his sequence of numbers. If you've ever seen the Da Vinci Code, or if you're already familiar with maths, you'll know these numbers. So the numbers, if you start off with 1, and then you add 1 to itself, you get 2. If you add 2 to 1, you get 3. If you add the 3 to the 2, you get 5. If you add the 5 to the 3, you get 8. Add the 8 to the 5, you get 13. Oh, my thing's broke. And so on. That's a Fibonacci sequence. If you translate those numbers into shapes, square shapes, so a 2-inch square shape, say, and a 3-inch square shape and a 5-inch square shape, you can make those shapes have a ratio of about 1 to 1.618. The further up the sequence you go, the more accurate those numbers get. Now, if you're getting bamboozled by maths, don't worry, I am the first person to shriek in horror whenever numbers and maths is mentioned. But I'll break everything down step by step and it will all become very clear. But you will probably have seen a Fibonacci spiral before. That's it. So that's 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, so on. So those shapes are found everywhere in nature, from microscopic fractals through ferns, shells, and up to the shape of a galaxy. So those Greek ideas about finding mathematical formula for beauty and Fibonacci's sequence and spirals came together rather nicely in Renaissance Italy with none other than Leonardo da Vinci, of course. And these theories were held in such high regard that they were known as sacred geometry or golden geometry. And I'll be showing you some different options for compositions using these theories with collage. And I'm going to use items taken from Morandi paintings, because Morandi, he's an Italian painter from the 1940s, and he's well known for his compositions. But on the surface, they are very simple compositions like these. And here I have some objects that are painted like this, and so I'm going to be using collage to show you how to put them together into brilliant compositions. So the first thing you need is your support. Support, that means piece of paper, canvas, wooden board, whatever it is that you're working on. And I've just got a bit of old cardboard, and I've made it into a golden rectangle. Now that just means that the length here and the length here are in the proportion 1 to 1.618, that golden proportion. Or, in other words, I've made a ruler here. Each unit is 10 centimetres. Doesn't have to be. You can use an inch, you can use 5 centimetres, 3 centimetres. You can use the length of your little finger, whatever, for a unit. But I've gone up 5 units here and 8 units across those Fibonacci numbers. So it is a perfect golden rectangle. And I can hear you saying, but not all rectangles are golden rectangles. My canvases aren't that proportion, but don't worry, I'll deal with that later on. So the first compositional division I'm going to make is the very simplest, and it's finding that horizon line. So I've got my 8 across, my 5 down. So I'm going to divide that 5 into 2 and 3 more Fibonacci numbers. And this is the horizon line. You have to bear with me while I get the sticky stuff off the back. I feel like I'm on Blue Peter. There we go. So that's the horizon line. Let me show you on a Morandi. So it would be right across, hang on, I'll do that again. It would be right across there. So about 2 units and 3 units up on the, let's have a look at a Leonardo da Vinci, The Last Supper. And on this, it would be right across the table. Oh, hang on. Right across the table there. Right, so here's my horizon line. There. So then I'll just cluster my objects on that line. And this is the simplest compositional device, is just to mark a horizon line about 1/3 across and then randomly place your objects on there. Morandi used this really simple compositional device quite a lot. What made his compositions special, he'd just cluster things together. He'd actually cluster them far more tightly than they could possibly be in real life, and that added a kind of attention to the composition that wouldn't be there normally. So even with a simple idea like this, you can still play around and get more unusual compositions together. He lived with his mother and his 2 sisters, a very tight-knit family group, and people have compared his compositions to rather claustrophobic family groups. So there we are. I've also arranged it in a sort of a pyramid with the tallest in the middle. So horizon line and a simple pyramid there for the most basic composition. So if your support, your canvas, your board, whatever it is, isn't perfect golden rectangle like mine, then, and most of them aren't actually. So if we take this Morandi here, you can see that it's not a golden rectangle, it's a bit more square than that. But you can also see there's a very visible band across the bottom that's sort of added on somehow. If you take that off, then that gives you more of the rectangle. We'll take a the same amount off the top there as well. That's a golden rectangle, and there's our 2 and 3 units there with the very clustered together objects. I'm going to divide up my support again now. I'm going to put in a vertical division. So I'm going 3 across and 5, like that. So this is also known as rabattement, because what I've also done is made a square. So I've divided my rectangle into a square, and there's another golden rectangle there with another square and another golden rectangle there. You don't have to use rabattement in a golden rectangle. You can square off any shaped canvas, and that's still rabattement. So I've got here a painting by Turner. It's The Fighting Temeraire. It's a very famous painting in which he wanted to mark new technologies. We always think of Turner as being a very old-fashioned painter, but he really embraced all that was new. And you can see the steamship in the foreground here, and this was all about the dawning of a new age of transport, of steam. And you can see the old galleon behind it, the steamship in front, and what is it that he wants to highlight? It's that space between the old and the new. It is an interesting painting. You can see the dawn, and the light there it doesn't go straight above, it's here. So if I was to square off the other side, there you are, it goes right through that strange bit of light that goes up. And here is a triangle shape, also known as a golden triangle. I'll come back to that later on. But a very interesting composition, that. So now I'm going to cluster my objects. Instead of just going right across, I'm going to cluster them so that the tallest one is on that line. It doesn't have to be the tallest thing, it can be whatever you want to draw attention to. So that becomes the focus. You can put it straight on top, you can put it either side of that line. But that's where I'm going to place these objects now. I'm working upside down, it's a bit tricky. You can really have fun. I love collage because you can really have fun with these, and just play around with different options. There we are. So now it's still a sort of pyramid shape, but it goes off to this point now. Right, so I'll show you how some other artists have used these horizontal and vertical points of focus. Here's an interesting one. There's a Samuel Peploe, one of the great Scottish colourists. Now, there's a very clear division in here. There's a very clear division in the painting. You can see a very clear golden rectangle here. And there is the golden section horizon line. And there is the vertical through the coffee pot, with this extra added on to the rectangle. Let's have a look at Mary Fedden. So the horizon doesn't have to be the lowest point, it can be higher up. So instead of putting the line through here, she's put her horizon line here. and then the coffee pot on the vertical. Here's another Mary Fedden where she's put the horizon line lower down on this one, but there's still a jug there. Let me show you this Diebenkorn because I've been using horizon lines. They don't have to be horizon lines. You can use just the vertical there. So that on this painting, it's very clear that the main emphasis is vertical and not horizontal. And he's got other lines going through like that. Here we are. This Diebenkorn's got, just like the Turner painting of the Temeraire, it's got a very clear diagonal there that really helps lead your eye into the painting. So if you've got this far, it's not too difficult to then put in those other grid lines. So you've got your division there, you've got the square, the rabattement. You could add in your other lines now. Obviously these won't be visible on your painting, they're just imaginary lines. I'm only making them visible on mine so that you can see what I'm doing. And this grid really allows you to play around with quite complex compositions that you might not attempt otherwise. You can really play around with flattening the picture plane, like in the Mary Feddens I showed you earlier, where things don't recede back into the distance, they're sort of stacked one on top of each other, like Matisse did. So you can really, if you've got a structure to work from, you can be a bit more experimental with where you put your objects. So I'm going to put some things higher up there, for example. Put maybe that there. You can really play around. Maybe I'll put that there, I don't know. So you can be more experimental because you've got rules and a structure to work from. Rules aren't always limiting. They allow a lot more freedom sometimes. So there you go, something like that maybe. Again, you can play around and come up with all sorts of different diagonals are very useful for leading your eye in. Especially on the next thing that we're going to do, which is a Fibonacci spiral. Show you for the Fibonacci spiral composition. I'm going to go to one of the masters of modern composition, Cézanne, like the granddaddy of still life painting. So he did lots of apple paintings like this. They look the composition looks quite random, doesn't it? But let's edit it and take off this top band here, because this is like the added on bit. there. And then, now it's quite tricky drawing freehand a spiral, but let's have a go. So I'm going to start the arc, move it to that point there, and then it goes round and finishes on that point about there. So you can see it follows the line of the bowl and the apples and the cloth, and then he's even sneaked in a cheeky golden triangle here with the knife pointing to whatever was in that pot. So it was obviously the pot that was the important thing for him there. So let's have a look at another painting of his. So here's another Cézanne. This format is almost a perfect sacred golden rectangle, but there's a tiny little band at the top here that is a lighter colour than the rest of it. That band there. So I'm going to take that off. And then the Fibonacci spiral, it's quite difficult to draw these freehand, but here we go. So it follows the arc of that lady's back and the trees up to this point here. And then it goes down around the bodies and finishes up on this point here, which is actually a little space, a little dark point. Cézanne often finishes up on a dark point. On some of his apple series, it's the dark point in the middle of an apple, but here it's a dark point, and you can see this lady here is actually looking at that point. Forgive my rubbish spiral, but you get the idea. There's Da Vinci again, with a portrait of Mona Lisa. And here is one of mine. So on this one, I really have shown you where the golden section is, because I put in a golden thread to show that she is clever and wise and the architect of her own future, and the spiral ends up with a little cricket of wisdom on her shoulder there. So I'm going to go back to my composition and put the horizon line on there, bearing in mind the centre of the spiral is about here. I'm going to use this shell shape to sort of help lead our eye through the spiral, and I want my other shell to be the focus of the portrait, of the painting. So I'm going to put a tall item on the upright there. Might go almost to the top there. And then I'm going to sort of get these other items to follow the shape of the spiral. Here we go. I can get the jug, that open part of the jug, to really follow that spiral as well. So this will help give the shape to the spiral going that way. Composition using this Fibonacci spiral. So you now know the basic principles of composition, of golden proportions, and how to put a painting together. If you've traced over a Fibonacci spiral onto clear acetate or clear plastic or perspex or something, you can use that as a viewfinder when you're putting together still lives. You can use it to check your own paintings to see if the composition is okay. You can also have fun going around galleries and art fairs like the Borders Art Fair, seeing which other artists have used golden proportions in their work. But hopefully that was helpful.